Jeremy here on the One Wild Crafter channel, and I want to show you how to turn your grouse into 2 meals, because typically at this size they're only 1. So this is a grouse that I shot this fall, and I also threw in 2 thighs from another grouse that I had, and I had them bagged separately, and I figured I would just add them all into the same pot. And because this is a big wild year meal, it is also going to be made with only wild foods. So our first meal is going to be roast grouse, and then our second meal is going to be a grouse soup with wild vegetables. So this grouse, not too many people do this, but if you've been watching my channel, you know that I do. It has its skin on because I plucked it, and also unfortunately has a few little leftover pin feathers here and there that I didn't get out the first time I cleaned through it. But they're mostly gone. I'm going to add a little bit of my precious supply of bear fat. So the skin is going to help to keep this grouse moist, but the bear fat is just a little bit of extra fat in there. And I also am going to try this out. So these are some juniper berries, and rather than throw them in whole, I'm going to do as one of you guys suggested. I'm going to crush them up, maybe get a little bit more out of them, and then we'll sprinkle those on the grouse as well. Okay, so you could put this in the oven to roast, but what I want to do is just add a little bit of water. I'm going to set it on the back of my wood stove on a trivet, so it won't be directly on the heat, but it'll be slowly heating all through the day. It's just about 8 in the morning, and I'm expecting to eat this for my lunch. I've got a lot going on this stove right now. There's herbal tea at the back, and here I'm hot leaching some acorns. So I'll need to move those guys down a little bit. Probably can see my bear hides tacked up on my shed out the window. This is just a pot of water that I boil to hydrate my house. Here's our grouse, and we're just going to set it here. We'll check on it in a few hours. Okay, so it's 4 hours later, and here's my grouse with the juniper berries, and I checked, and although it wasn't on the direct heat, it appears to have cooked all the way through. So there's a finished roast grouse ready to eat. So I'll keep the grouse on an element to keep it warm while I steam up these milkweed pods. So there are 40 small milkweed pods that I blanched, and I'm going to put them in this pot. I'm going to steam them, and then what I'll do is change the water and steam them a second time. So milkweed pods have alkaloids in them, and it varies in intensity by region and by species of milkweed. I find ours here very mild, but just to spoil myself, I'm going to do 2 changes of water this time. There it is. So grouse and its 2 legs, 2 thighs from another grouse, a little pile of twice steamed milkweed. Let's see what it tastes like. They say that hunger's the best spice. I haven't eaten since supper last night. It's 12:30 now. The first thing I want to try is some of the breast meat with the skin on this grouse, and it's got quite a bit of the juniper crushed up on there. That's really good. I don't taste the juniper. But the best thing is that it's really moist. And a complaint you hear a lot of the time is that grouse is a dry meat. But when you cook it with the skin on, which most people around here do not do, that helps to hold the moisture in, and it adds the fat from the skin. Plus I added a little bit of that bear fat, and it kind of simmered in that pot for 3 hours, 4 hours, with a little bit of water and all those fat juices. That is really, really good. Try a milkweed pod. It's pretty good. I should have steamed them 3 times. They're slightly bitter. Milkweed pods are good. They have a texture on the outside and they're kind of mushy in the middle, as long as you pick them when they're immature enough. They hold a lot of juice inside, so when you bite them, you get that burst of the juices. And actually, if they're too hot, you have to be careful that you don't burn yourself from the hot juice, the hot water inside of them. So they're just crunchy enough to be really satisfying, like half-cooked broccoli. And they have a really good flavor. I don't know if I can describe it well. So this is a success. I'm going to eat all this, and then I'll show you how to stretch this grouse into a second meal by building a soup stock from the carcass and the bones, and then we're going to add some wild food to that. Alright, this is what's left of that grouse. There's the carcass. There was even a liver and heart in there, which I ate up. Here's all the leg bones. And I found one pellet. And I've got a little jar set aside. I actually am going to reload a shell one day out of pellets that I've pulled out of my game birds, and use it to shoot another game bird. That's my plan with that. So, heading over here, here's the juices from roasting that bird. You can see that there's some really nice fatty juices in there. All I'm going to do is now add the carcass back into the same pot. All those little bones too. I'm going to top this up with water, and then I'm going to set it on my wood stove again and just let that all simmer away to make nice soup stock. And I might do that for maybe the next 8 hours. Okay, so I'll check right back in. When I roasted it, I kept the lid on because I wanted to trap the juices. But now that I'm making a soup stock, I'm leaving the lid off so that some of the water can evaporate and the stock will condense. If it gets low enough, then partway through I might top it up with some fresh water and continue to let it simmer. And just as an aside, these are my acorns, red oak acorns that I'm processing by the hot leach method. This is their 4th change of water. So although this sat on my wood stove for 4 hours, it was at a pretty low temperature. So I'm bringing it back up to a simmer on my electric oven, and I'm going to strain this to get all the bones out of it, and I'll pick the meat off the bones and then add it back into the stock. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'm going to dice up these milkweed pods so that they're a smaller texture in the final soup. Alright, this has been simmering away. I'll strain it into this bowl. And then I've basically got everything in my strainer. And I'll pour the bowl back into the soup pot. Oh, and all over the counter. Stove top. Maybe I should have practiced that move. It's all good. Pick some bone meat off here, and all the little meat pieces go back in the soup. Also going to add these milkweed pods back in. And the other thing I want to add is I have these swayless cavapes. These are the hollow foot slippery jack. And just to add a little bit of protein, a little bit of texture, a little bit of flavor, I'm going to crush some of these guys up and put them in as well. And I'll let this simmer for a little bit longer. And I will have grouse and wild mushroom soup. A second meal from one small grouse. I'm going to turn this off because it looks like the mushrooms have all rehydrated. And everything's simmered down. And I would say the way these milkweed pods chopped up, they really look like leeks. This is really giving me a leek soup kind of a feeling to it, but I know it won't taste anything like a leek soup. But it's good though. It's very mild. But I taste a little bit of those mushrooms. And then the mild flavor from the milkweed pods. They did steam 3 or 4 times. And the grouse fat. You taste that in there too. So that's supper. Day 12. 2 meals, 1 grouse. Big wild year.